So we'll get started with a quote from the great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and it reads, "An injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And this comes directly from a letter from Birmingham jail. And again, the author is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Hopefully this quote resonates with you all. In the face of everything that's going on in the world, I thought it would be appropriate just to bring us all together with a quote of this magnitude. So before we get into the nuts and bolts of this dialogue, we wanted to pose a question to you all, and that is, what is race? If you're using your computer, over in the chat box, the link to respond is there. Ms. Church has posted it. So please do me a favor and go ahead and take a stab at your definition of race.
So quick, easy ways to access it. If you have your phone nearby, go to menti.com. You can type in that code right there, 534992, or in the chat box, copy and paste that link into a new tab.
So we'll give you all an opportunity to respond before we show you what we're all thinking. And on the screen, you should see some of the feedback that we are getting. A social construct, a way to characterize people groups of the human race. I don't think I know anymore. Grouping of people with shared physical characteristics, social construct. Sweet. So thank you for those of you who responded. We will actually get into some definitions in just a second. Thank you, Ms. Church, for sharing your screen. So before we get into definitions, I just want to go over the purpose of why we are here. We are here in hopes that we can broach the conversation on racial and social justice in our district. Some of the things that we know to be true are students of color continue to underperform academically, and when brought to the attention of decision makers at the district level, there is not attention to fix this issue. We also know that African Americans and Latino males are disciplined at higher rates than any other race. We know that marginalized students lack access to programs and services. We also know that Centinela Valley has a high population of unduplicated students. That includes foster youth, special education, EL students. We also know that racial equity is not addressed widely with intent in Centinela Valley. It's almost a scary thing to talk about, which is why this association felt it necessary to host this forum so that we can start to dialogue about racial equity in a safe space where we as educators can begin to learn from each other or share our knowledge. We also know that our schools are policed by third-party agencies. That's the Hawthorne PD as well as the Lawndale Sheriff's Department. We are all facing the effects of COVID-19 and it negatively impacting communities of color. We also know that distance learning is impacting the quality of the education that we normally provide. The resolve, we believe, is recognizing the structures that continue to oppress people. We also want to eliminate those structures that oppress. We also want to ensure that all of us have an opportunity to teach culturally relevant pedagogy and to begin a solutions-based dialogue and implement a plan of action to address the needs of all students. I am your moderator for today. I am your president and your president-elect. So thank you all for having the confidence in me to re-elect me as your president for this organization. I have been in Centinela Valley for 19 years now. 19 years, but I'm only 19. I have taught physical education all 19 of those years, with the exception of a few years where I was the activities director. And since I've been an employee of Centinela Valley, I have always been engaged with the association. From the first week or first month that I was hired, I was actually encouraged by one of our veteran educators to get involved with the association. At the time, I didn't know that it might be taboo for a brand new teacher to get involved with the association, but I was raised to respect my elders, so I did it. And I had some experience with union activity because my father was a Teamster. He was a forklift driver at Pepsi Cola for as long as I can remember. And when he retired there, that Teamster spirit was ingrained in me. And so I continue to fight these fights on behalf of labor every single day because I believe it is uber necessary. We have two additional panelists that will participate today, and that is Estella Church. Estella, will you introduce yourself to us?
Hello, Estella, Owoimaha-Church. I teach theater and English at Hawthorne, mostly 10th grade. Drama is mixed. I've been in the district now, I think, for about 5 or 6 years. Not totally sure. Somewhere in there. I serve in union leadership as your at-large rep, so thank you for re-electing me. I'm also your human rights chair and sit on the equity team with Ruthie. Yeah, I think that's it.
Sweet. Thank you, Estella. Ruthie? You're on mute.
Good evening. I work at Hawthorne High School. This is my 11th year. And for my entire career, I've committed my life to English learners. So I've worked with English learners, not only while I was in Centinela, but since I was in college as an instructional assistant. And I teach social studies and teach our sheltered classes. I am the CVSTA secretary and have done a little bit of work with CTA 2 years ago. Me and another colleague, Christy Leeson, presented at the CTA Equity and Human Rights Conference. Last year, I also had an amazing opportunity to be selected as the 2019 NEA Foundation Global Learning Fellow. So we had a whole year of training, and we spent a couple of weeks in the summer in South Africa. So I'm committed to this work. I know that after leaving South Africa, we just had this calling to continue to fight for equality and ensure that our students of color have the same opportunities and the same education that other students have in other communities. So this work is a passion of mine for sure.
Sweet. Thank you, Ruthie. So at this point, I would like to introduce or reintroduce or reiterate some key terms that you might hear today. One, we asked you in regards to race to give us your definition. And here is the definition that we would like for you all to be mindful of. And we define race as a term created by colonial forces to intentionally separate people based on color, the color of their skin. It's a caste system based entirely on color, and it refers to how people view you. Completely made up. No scientific bearing. It is a completely made up system. Racism, the ways in which discrimination, prejudice, and oppression manifest within meta-systems and structure, such as healthcare, education, which we are all members of, which is why we want a dialogue so that we can be better together, and law enforcement. We see the racism play out with law enforcement. We get the impression that this plays out with law enforcement when we take a look at the news. And POCN refers to people of color and Native American people. BIPOC refers to Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Whiteness is often invisible to white people and perpetuates a lack of knowledge or understanding of the difference, which is the root cause of oppression. And we'll get into whiteness and white privilege a little more throughout the dialogue. White privilege we define as inherent advantages possessed by white people on the basis of their race in a society characterized by racial inequities and injustices. White fragility we define as discomfort and defensiveness on the part of white people when confronted by information about racial injustice and, and inequities, and equity, which is the overarching goal of what we want to achieve. Equity is the quality of being fair and impartial. So with that, we move to a number of questions that I will ask our panelists to answer. And the first, both Ruthie and Estella will answer. The first question is, are there opportunities within Centinela Valley that aim to help students develop cultural identity as well as cultural assets?
I do not necessarily believe that there are specific or too many specific programs. We definitely have the MSA on campuses. I know that Lusinger has a cohort of Black males in Avid. And I know that there are plenty of amazing teachers in our district who make a great effort to ensure that they're having really tough conversations and dialogues in their classroom and are making sure that curriculum and content is culturally relevant and always responsive to their kids and what's going on in the world. But I don't know that we have a very clear district outline, goal, and trajectory on this topic. Ruthie?
You said it perfectly. A lot of teachers doing good work in this area. but nothing systemic, right? And that's kind of why we're here, to create system changes to ensure that there's equity, and that teacher goes away, and that it's not a program, but the work that teacher is doing in the realm of cultural identity and ensuring that students see their assets leaves. So there's nothing in place in CV that is systemic and really identifies and cultivates cultural identity among our students, and them identifying that, or even like discussing like the assets that our kids come with to our schools, and how they really enrich our schools.
Ruthie, do you mind emphasizing on assets? What might an educator, what is a cultural asset?
Right. So it's their experiences, it's them like living, right? I always talk to my students in the beginning of the year, we talk a lot about identity and the assets that they bring, and how we learn from each other and how I learn from them. But it's their background, their diversity that they come from. And I'm going to allude a little bit to my EL learners, because they come from we all think that they're just Spanish speakers, but they're very diverse, and that they come with from all over Latin America and Africa and Asia, and they come with language. And so their home language is an asset. Their dialects, some of them speak indigenous languages, and they don't see that as an asset. And we should teach them that that is an asset. Being bilingual, it's super important. The knowledge that's been brought down from generation to generation, right? We focus in the United States so much about formal education, but they come with an amazing set of knowledge, informal things that they learn from their parents, from their grandparents. And so that's what we want to make sure that our kids come with. I know that we see assets in them, and they bring us these gifts every year that we need to amplify and ensure that they feel valued at our school, and help them identify, like, not a lot of them understand their own identity. Some of them are ashamed of their identity. Some of them have never been asked to identify themselves in a way that shows their value.
Ruthie, can you segue into our next question? What do you feel are the challenges to racial and social justice in CV? And in an ideal world, what does racial and social justice look like in Centinela Valley?
One of the things that I saw, and while our district has made great strides since 11 years ago, that there was a big racial divide among our students. And I think to some extent we continue to have that. If you look at how, when you go out on the grounds, students are sitting with, ethnically, sometimes with people who they identify with. And so and so that is a challenge. It's a challenge because kids don't feel like they can identify with other kids. And so we've never done any work to build that, to remove that gap. A couple of years ago, myself and other amazing educators, including Estella, we had formed FSU, a collective of teachers committed to cultural inclusiveness and culturally relevant pedagogy. We wanted to bring ethnic studies, and FSU stands for Fostering Student Unity. And that work was shut down by our district. A lot of the teachers were targeted. Many of them left. Some of them were not rehired. And so, for me, the challenge is the power structures that exist, administration, like we talked about in silence, right? There's this silence when it comes to talking about identity, culture, empowering students to recognize their assets, bringing students together, because some people think that teaching kids how to see their value will cause them to organize and to demand better. And so that has been the struggle at CV.
Thank you, Ruthie. Speaking of organizing, Estella, you've had some very profound experiences in regards to students and organizing students. Might you share some of your experience with our colleagues here?
For sure. I was going to say, as they should organize. That is their human right and civil right, and they should always be encouraged to do so. The theater students, I think, get overlooked and ignored as a group of nerdy, dorky, artsy kids. And we sit in my classroom and blast the Hamilton soundtrack as loud as we can and goof off. This is true. But they are also having really hard, powerful conversations around things like Hamilton. Like they when that musical first came out, my students got immediately into this lengthy conversation about what that means. What does it mean for hip hop? What does it mean for Broadway? What does it mean for the future of BIPOC artists in theater and in fine arts? So that's just like one example. But my students, I teach them that art should be in service of their community, and that their skills as theater artists are ridiculously transferable to any and all professions, no matter where they choose to go in life. And I usually encourage them to avoid majoring in theater and to move into other things that drive them, that drive their passions, because I imagine a world one day where there are critically students who are now young people and adults and leaders who are able to think critically, but also creatively to solve some of the world's most difficult challenges, like racism and systemic oppression. And so anytime there has been a huge outcry or a tragedy, my students respond immediately. I was at a union event in another state somewhere, and it was the Christchurch bombing or massacre in New Zealand. And my students were texting me at like 1 a.m. like, "Miss, this is terrible. This is wrong. What do we do?" Because everybody who identifies as Muslim in our community or Arab should know that we don't feel that way and that they're safe and protected. That was how my students responded. And I was like, I'm asleep. Can we talk about it in the morning? But they were like, no, this is serious. We need to do something. I was like, okay. And they came up with a plan they reached out to all the nurseries in our neighborhood, and there's quite a few. They did a lot of research into the Quran and what some important symbols are in the Quran, and they found that a pomegranate tree had some real cultural significance about unity and planting seeds of hope and love and peace. And so one student drew this beautiful pomegranate tree painting, and we made several copies of it. All the theater students wrote well wishes on little pomegranates that they cut out. And then the nurseries in our neighborhood donated to us pomegranate trees. And I filled up my little Kia Soul and I delivered those trees along with the well wishes tags to all of the mosques in our neighborhood. And then one mosque, the one near Prairie Vista, we were invited to celebrate Ramadan with them, the final feast in Ramadan with them. And then we sent all the nurseries the paintings of pomegranate trees. They've responded to the Gilroy attacks and the school shootings. They are always ready to defend every student's rights on campus, no matter how people view them or treat them. They respond with empathy and kindness, but are always concerned that their hearts, they're actors and artists, they're empaths, like they feel very deeply about everything. And so I try to make sure that they have very creative, solid strategies to focus that energy and do things to uplift others. And we very often get into conversations about identity and race and gender and sexual orientation, and all of that. My students, they were the ones who founded the GSA a couple years ago, or refounded. We had one, it went away, and so they applied to CTA for the LGBTQ grant that they give out each year, and we were awarded it was like $1,500, that grant, to kickstart the GSA and put on a production of literary project that year. And so my students have received a lot of pushback from the district, so much so that we were sort of, I'm gonna put banned in quotation marks, banned from doing Shakespeare. And it was in response to my students saying that after the few years back, the shooting at Cliff Post in Orlando, of course, my students were devastated about that too. And so they wanted to redesign a version of A Midsummer Night's Dream that honored all of those victims, except that was considered too much. And so we were just told, no, no Shakespeare, find another show. And they've been met with that type of, I don't know what the word is, those roadblocks and challenges every step of the way. When they wanted to organize around Black Lives Matter, they were met with, no, you can't do that. That's too much. When they want to organize around queer rights, they said, no, too much.
With that, what suggestions would you give your colleagues who may have some reservation about racial and social justice work? Black Lives Matter has been taboo in Centinela Valley. You just gave some examples of students who identify with their sexual preferences. There's a number of things that we kind of stray away from as an organization. We've asked for training and we get implicit bias that's and trainers are without a wealth of knowledge on the topic. But in regards to folks who are on the line who may have some reservation, may not know how to broach the dialogue, what suggestions would you give them?
I think that part of the problem is that we don't have a common language to speak with because we haven't got good enough training and professional development. And so I would suggest, like, as a personal, I think most educators, we are a reflective bunch, right? Like, if you've read Pedagogy of the Oppressed, then you know that true transformation comes from reflection and action. And you know, teachers, we tend to be harder on ourselves in that way. But to continue to read and pick up the texts that are talking about these things, what is white fragility? What is white supremacy? What is race and racism? What does it look like in a U.S. context or overseas? And just continue to learn and grow so that we can come together and develop a very common and cohesive language, because then I think Ruthie alluded to it, but like the administration definitely does not reflect our staff or our student body for sure. And so I think that they're all always looking through their own lens as opposed to empathetically viewing things from a different perspective and from the perspective of our students. And so they also are missing a common language. And so when words like race get brought up, it's a scary thing, a taboo thing. But because we keep shying away from it, we have a culture on our campus, and I can only speak for Hawthorne, where the N-word is used very flagrantly every day, all the time, and it just is allowed to happen, so much so that teachers of colors or subs feel like they can be attacked and there will be no consequences or repercussions. And I will say, like, Nigerian students in particular and Nigerian teachers on campus, myself included, don't feel safe all the time because we don't openly talk about it. The culture has been allowed to become this toxic in this way. And so finding common language and continuing to learn, I think is really important on everybody's part.
Thank you. Ruthie, might you offer any suggestions for our colleagues across the district in regards to the subject matter? You're on mute again.
I always kind of remind myself, like, you know, my parents were immigrants. I have a lot of family who's undocumented. I teach a lot of students who are undocumented. And the whole thing of being undocumented, unapologetic, and unafraid and unapologetic is something that I've carried with in everything I do. So we have to be like unwavering in our like work in this area, like no matter what. Like I remember when FSU kind of was, when my colleagues left and it was just me and Estella, and you know, we do a lot on campus. We didn't have the other people to carry the work. It kind of just fell apart. But you know, you move on to something else and you continue that work in other spaces. And I've always, when I've talked to educators about continuing work around building students' assets and nurturing them and dealing with trauma and all that stuff, you have to, because it's defeating. It defeats you. Like you're in a fight every single step of the way. And it could be really defeating and very, you know, it's tiring. It wears you down. And you have to remember, like, that's the purpose, right? The purpose of this, the purpose of the structures that exist is to wear us down and to give up. And you can't. You have to kind of find your tribe. And I think that's why we're starting this, because we need a tribe right now. We need a tribe. Like this is an opportunity to do some of this work because it's at the forefront of everything. COVID, like, uncovered some of the inequities, and now this whole Black Lives Matters movement that's resurfaced because of all the police brutality and murders, the hands of over-policing, is something that we need to like grab and run with it. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to really make some solid systemic changes at CV, but it's going to be a lot of work, and we have to stand firm in our beliefs that, you know, we have to address we have to have racial and social justice in our schools. And it requires a lot of work and a lot of passion and, you know, like a lot of setbacks, but then it's super rewarding. I mean, just the little things that we've done and the work we do with kids, like it's worth it. And so, you know, just to stand firm in what you believe in.
Thank you, Ruthie. You talked a bit about policing, and on our site and within the district, we have adopted PBIS, and we were told that this is not a one-time thing. This is a structure or a format in how we do business on a daily basis. Might you share how restorative practices play a part in racial and social justice?
Well, that's the foundation, right? Restorative practice is about building relationships. And for me, the whole, when restorative practices came, it was at the same time that PBIS came. And, you know, the district sent me to restorative practices training for a whole week. So I'm certified in that. And they cautioned us at that training, like, hey, restorative practices, restorative justice is getting a bad rap because it's not being implemented correctly. And lo and behold, that happens in Centinela. And so we had an opportunity to embrace true social justice or restorative practice, and we dropped the ball, and we now do PBIS. And it's good work too. You know, we have leaps, we have rocks at other sites, and Olympians, I forget, Spirit, I think it is, or I'm not sure what it is. And that's important work because our kids need to have like character traits that define, our school needs to have character traits that define our work. But restorative practices is beyond that. It's building relationships and restoring relationships when somebody's been harmed. And it's bringing in the school community, the students community, to lift that child up and teach them that when you harm somebody, then you have to restore it. And so that just hasn't been instituted, right? A lot of folks got trained, but it requires more than just bringing kids together and having a community circle, which is part of it. That's an important part of it. But true restorative practices hasn't, in my opinion, hasn't happened. We do have, to me, when you believe in, when you follow a model of restorative practices, you don't have policing on campus. So having the SRO on campus, to me, is a big indicator that we're not serious about doing this work with students and ourselves too, as teachers, right? I think that's something we have to revisit, and something worth revisiting as we, our kids are going to come to school with a different lens after COVID, after all this racial tension that's going on. They're going to be different. We're going to be different, right? And true restorative practices would be an amazing, medicine, like a remedy for some of the things that we're going to be grappling with as our kids come back into our classrooms. A lot of them woke, like, hey, I know, like, I deserve better. Some with trauma, others confused. And so equipping ourselves with skills, with the knowledge to be able to meet them effectively and have those really courageous discussions and hard discussions and important discussions is going to be essential to the work that we do as we prepare to resume, however we resume, whether it's distance learning or face-to-face. We're not prepared.
Thank you, Ruthie. Estella, might you share your thoughts on restorative practices?
All that Ruthie said, for sure. I do not believe that we did it correctly or with fidelity or implemented it well or like we should have. And to earlier points about the way our system has very strategically squashed a lot of the good work that was happening. A lot of the educators and administrators that were in our district when those initiatives were introduced and were trying to spearhead that work are now no longer within our district. They're also gone. And so I think that, again, there's another indicator, like Ruthie said, that we are not serious about the work. And the other indicator that we're not serious about this equity work is the budget and the LCAP and all of the items that are outlined or not outlined in the budget. We, in recent work and in analyzing those documents, it's very clear that the dollar amount that we have decided as a district to lump all underserved and marginalized students together in one category with a tiny piece of the budget versus other categories of students with much larger pieces of the budget. The amount of money that we spend on policing in our district totals, I want to say, more than twice as much as that has been allocated for foster youth, African American students, PI students, and our SPED populations. That's a very clear indicator right there that we would rather police our kids than build them up from the inside out, right? Like, we should be empowering them and uplifting them and making sure that they are whole people who are going to be able to, like our graduate profile says, they're going to graduate and be strong global communicators and collaborators. But we have sucked all that out of them, and we've decided to over police them while also simultaneously pulling away financial resources that would help sustain them. And we've diverted attention from restorative justice or any other initiative that would help feed our students.
Thank you, Estella. So I just want to segue into the next question in regards to silence. If you all are on social media, you are probably seeing a lot about silence and folks encouraging non-Black folks in regards to the George Floyd murder to not be silent. Can you, Estella, tell me your thoughts about silence in a situation like this, racial and social justice? Is silence golden?
No, silence is complicit. You are an accomplice in the murder of George Floyd, so long as you stay silent. Your silence equals you being complicit to racial and social injustice. And I have probably been far too vocal on my personal social media over the last couple of days because the rage and the pain and the trauma and the reliving of that trauma every time I turn on the news is far too great to bear. And that is the only place I have to express it at this moment. But I put out a very clear message to every organization that I work with or volunteer for, that if by the end of the day, I sent a very simple email, by the end of the day, I need to see a clear statement from you in defense of Black lives and a plan to make sure that you are uprooting racial injustice and systemic oppression within your organization. And if I do not see that statement by the end of the day, I am stepping down from any ambassadorship or role that I hold within your organization. And I'm glad that 9 out of the 10 organizations responded immediately with a statement and a plan. And that's how I'm moving through from here on out.
Thank you. Ruthie, what does silence mean to you?
I mean, for me, I agree exactly with Estella. I mean, we need to rally around this and like it's all hands on deck, right? Like this Black Lives Matter, and we need to say it loud and back that up with actions. I myself have been donating, signing petitions. I'm not out there protesting, but I'm doing other things, educating my students, educating my family, educating myself. But I've been in the district long enough to, silence has been something that we have struggled with in the district. Teachers are not, and rightly so, like we have a history in CV of retaliation. And those, and so when I said earlier where you have to kind of be unwavering in what you believe and you have to be vocal and you can't, be scared about things it's hard to do that because every time you want to fix the systems, you don't get a lot of people to support you. And the silence is loud in CV, has always, in my opinion, has always been loud. Because folks are not willing to rally around causes that the district doesn't support. And so a lot of the work that needs to be done has never been done because of that. Estella said it, what do? They are threatened by the productions that her drama kids choose, and they silence it by cutting her funding and giving an excuse that there's no space. And where were our, in myself included, where was I, right? There's a lot of silence in CV, not willing to take a stand on things that we see that our colleagues are going through and then change, right? We're supposed to be lifelong learners, and as our student population change and our country changes, where we're supposed to change with the times and improve and improve and improve and learn and improve and learn and improve. It's like never ending, right? Education is never ending. And to me, that's where I hear in CV the biggest silence. Like,
thank you, Ruthie. And I just want to jump in here in regards to is real. And I just want to call on our executive director in regards to how retaliation might help us be silent.
That's interesting. That was why I wanted to interject right there, because it's totally, I know, you know, people come to me because they know that I can keep confidence, and I will keep their confidence, and I won't, you know, expose, you know, things that they say or feel. And I know that you've got lots of people that would be allies, that would be supporters, but are not, for fear of retaliation. And that fear is real and justified. The problem is that somebody, you know, groups, numbers are on your side. You've got to stand up in support of each other so that retaliation is ineffective. I mean, we can see a golden example of that right now. There are so many people out on the street protesting. Try as they might, they can tear gas people. They're even turning water hoses on people again, which is unbelievable to me that's where we have come to again. But they can't stop those numbers. They're just too many people. When enough people stand up, you can't ignore them. You can't reject them. You can't retaliate against them all, because they're too many. You can't respond in that way. There's protection in numbers. And while the retaliation has happened in your district, I'm hoping that we're at a turning point, a tipping point, where so many people will say that that's enough. I draw the line here, that people can start to stand together in support of each other. You know, we've had people denied positions that they've applied for because they've spoken out, they've been vocal, they've been outspoken either in a department meeting or a faculty meeting or in an email to somebody. You've rubbed somebody the wrong way. And there's got to be some follow through on that. And, you know, Ruthie says, where was she? Where was I? You know, we all get so busy. There's so much stuff. There's so many fights to have. But we've got to focus. We really have to focus now, because there is an opportunity and we don't want to lose it. We don't want all these deaths to have been in vain, that we can't make some strides on a racial and social front, and we want to be able to move forward based on the sacrifices that people have made and are making, even as we speak, even as we sit here. There are people that are risking everything to be out there and to move this ball forward, and we have to do that too. And I'm committing to be there, to stand with you, to stand with people that are willing to take that risk. You're willing to risk being out there. I'm going to make sure that I am, that CTA Legal is, you know, because some of that is pushing them to, you know, no, we have to take a stand here. And cases that they are reluctant to move forward, I'm going to fight even harder to try to move cases forward when we believe we've been the victim of retaliation. And where we don't have a legal ground, we have moral ground, and we have an opportunity there to organize with those numbers. You know, where there are no laws on the books that can support us, we have members. You know, you have over 300 members. There are over 1,700 in SBUT altogether, in South Bay United Teachers. There are over, 18,000 in our region. I mean, we've got numbers. There are over 300,000 in all of CTA. So, and 3 million in NEA, you know, and that's where that local organizing and that statewide organizing come into play. You know, I think hopefully that the days are over where we just, you know, you feel defeated and you just go ahead on and wait for the next thing. No, we're primed to stand together.
Thank you for that. And I think I am happy to happy to share with you all that CVSTA today, as a executive board, the leadership took action to stand firm on racial and social justice work in Centinela Valley. We believe that equity is at the crust of where we need to be right now, and we will stand firm and move this agenda forward. We do believe that we are going to be faced with some challenges at the district level, but we have a plan to address those feelings, those attitudes, those personalities, to continue to give our students what they need to be successful. We are the experts in this field, and we think this is where we need to be, and so we will move forward in one accord. I do want to move to the last formal question that we have for our panelists, and that is in regards to white privilege. White privilege has been a word that has been taboo as well. And sometimes white folks feel like it's a bad term and that it places fault on them for some of the, or all of the structural oppression that currently exists. Panelists, how would you address the assumption that white privilege assumes negative intent and places fault on individual folks?
I think, again, that goes back to us having common language and definitions of these terms and understandings of these terms. White privilege does not place guilt, shame, or blame on any white person right now in this moment as like being at fault. Like we're not, the term is not saying that it's all because of you, this one teacher right here, you're the reason why everyone's in the street right now. That's not what the term means. And if we understand it and like we can sit with it, then we can move forward. But I also think that you should feel uncomfortable. Like that's also part of the problem, and the way and what has allowed white privilege and fragility to, when we start to talk about these important issues, the issues get silenced because fragility and privilege take center in the conversation. And then it becomes about, well, you're making me feel some kind of way. And I would say to that, good, you should feel some kind of way, because the goal is for you and I both to work through this together. And so right now, I'm feeling some kind of way about the fact that it's not safe for my husband to walk outside. And if I have to live with that and be uncomfortable with that, you for a few minutes can be uncomfortable with facing your white privilege. Even in my daily practice, I allow my students and I have a relationship where they can check me on my privilege, because even as a woman of color, I have them. I am able-bodied. I am not queer presenting or, of a different sexual orientation. I have several privileges, and I've got to sit with how uncomfortable that makes me feel sometimes when someone calls me out on being an ableist, or I get called out on being ageist. Like that discomfort is necessary to move past it and grow. And if we're ever going to reach a point of reconciliation, it has to happen. And so, no, white privilege, the term does not assume that you are bad or at fault, but the term is a way for you to be reflective and face what this thing is, this invisible thing is. You need to face it and take on what responsibilities you have in that, because you do get to move through CV alone. White teachers get to move through CV differently than I get to move through CV. I can't be myself in a conversation and say what I want to say or how I want to say it, because someone is going to look at me and say either you're being too aggressive or say to me, oh my God, I can't believe you're so articulate. And I promise you that those two things have been said to me in almost every single meeting with every single white administrator in this district. And that's not fair. And I've had my work wife is white, my one of my best friends in this district, and we've tested it where I ask a question and I'm immediately told, no, you can't do that, not for you. And she will literally 2 seconds later go ask the exact same question, and administration goes, oh yeah, absolutely, whatever you need. And the both of us just go, huh? Are you serious? Like you literally just told her no to something, and you told me yes. Why?
I see Stephanie on my screen. Stephanie, I know you have painstakingly shared experiences with me directly. Might you add to this message?
Sure. Well, first I want to say it really upsets me to hear Stella recount in a public forum what she and I together for years, and I've had to watch her cry, pull herself back up in the 4-minute passing period that we have, and go back to her classroom and teach like what she just experienced didn't happen. It's been more traumatizing for me as a spectator than anything that I've suffered. And I haven't actually experienced it. I'll give you a very specific example. We had a question regarding something being held in the cafeteria one year. It was a piece of theater equipment, and I was running GSA, and Church was running theater. And Church asked if she could hold the equipment in the cafeteria and was told absolutely not. And I walked up, I am not kidding you, not 2.5 minutes after that, and said, oh, I'm looking for this piece of equipment, but I'd like to store it in the cafeteria. Can I do that? Sure, no problem. And I mean, it's time and again. It's real. And for me, for her to be so vocal and have so many doors just shut in her face when she has put so much in her heart, her soul, it hurts me for her. And it hurts me for anyone in this district that experiences that. I have asked and she has held me back. I'm like, let me go. And she's the one that catches my coattails on the way out the door because, she cares about me too. But we need to start with empathy first. One of the things that I shared for our students at Lloyd was that you may not experience the same things ever in your lifetime as a person that you are a friend with, a teacher to, a student of, but you need to listen and put value in that experience because it's theirs. Perspective is everything. And if we can't listen to one another and find value and purpose in someone's value and purpose, we're deaf. I mean, I was going to cuss, but never mind like ignorant to color and race and all of that. We are deaf. We are not even communicating. It's unempathetic, it's unkind, and it's unjust. And I'm all done being quiet, so Church can't catch my coattails anymore.
And you're at another site, so she can't.
No.
Physically grab you. Thank you, Stephanie, for sharing. Ruthie, might you have anything or more to share in regards to white privilege?
I mean, what could I add other than, we need to check our own privilege as we, as a light Mexican American, I have a lot of privilege and hopefully I'm using it to advance equity in my classroom and speak for students who don't feel and teachers who don't feel comfortable speaking. And I've been able to navigate, college and this world a lot easier than my best friend who's dark Mexican American. And I just had this conversation with my racist leaning brother this weekend. And, he has privilege. And the idea, just like, what? Mexicans are treated this way and that way. I go, yeah. But so we just have to continue to check ourselves, I think. And I don't think white people don't care. I just think because it doesn't affect them, they easily forget about their privilege. Right.
Thank you both. I would like to open the dialogue up to questions, comments, concerns coming from those who are on the call outside of our panelists. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to either type them in the chat box or unmute yourself and share.
Hi.
Hi, Betty.
I would like to comment on, as much as I love our safety officers and recognize the need for safety on campus, I don't like the way they get used to take children to the office or to police when they are being truant and so forth. I feel like that's pushing our students into this like police state kind of thing, where they only show authority, the only authority is a uniform instead of the respect of interacting with ununiformed adults. Just something that bothers me.
Thank you so much, Betty, for sharing. And I agree. I've spoken to a number of our safety officers who share the same sentiment in being utilized in that way. So absolutely. And I'm sure we can get on the same page with our classified staff members in regards to the perception of safety officers on our campus. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Well, as a resolution to this, I'd like to see more non-uniformed administration and RTI people out on campus instead of getting buried in offices with other work, to actually just be out interacting with our students.
Thank you. We share that sentiment as well. And I will move on to next steps. So the association, again, is committed to moving forward with racial and social justice work. We understand that when we meet the need of the most marginalized person, we help everyone. And so we, again, believe that this is the work that we need to be doing right now. And our next steps are continued dialogue with educators in our district, with CV educators, with district leaders, including our board members. We know that they drive the direction of our district. And so we want to start with them. We also want to have robust and fully funded ethnic studies programs in Centinela Valley. Again, we understand and we know it's been proven that students who can positively identify with themselves and know the value and contributions of others, they are better folks and they are more informed. And so we want to advocate for ethnic studies. We want to defund and break contracts with Hawthorne PD and the sheriffs and create new restorative justice programs. We understand that there has been a long history of policing in our district, but that is not necessary. As adults, when we create rapport with our students, we don't have to do as much discipline. When there is a disciplinary need, we have strategies in place to address those needs, and it doesn't have to be someone that carries a weapon on our campuses. We are advocating for budget oversight and clear priorities for support. We know that we have an LCAP. We know that we are a quote unquote winning district in regards to the supplemental and concentration of funds that we get with our district to meet the needs of those most marginalized populations. But we can't follow that trail. We don't see that the priorities of our district are aligned with the greatest need. And so we want to advocate for that. We are the association CVSTA will be crafting a resolution in regards to Black Lives Matter Week and ensuring that there is access to Black Lives Matter curriculum for all of our educators. We started to push this year during Black History Month, and we got met with a host of resistance in regards to not being able to access the Black Lives Matter page, and that there a bunch of barriers. And so we want to go full force with ensuring that there is adequate curriculum in regards to making Black Lives Matter. We are advocating for the formation of an equity committee and the hiring of an equity officer. If there were someone in place to advocate, or not even to advocate, to examine equity in our district, then we could better see where our shortcomings are. If there was someone specifically and intently dedicated to creating programs and implementing programs at all of our school sites to ensure that there is equitable access to all of our programs at all of our schools, then we would be better served. We're calling for an equity audit. That way, this equity officer has some data to drive their work. And we want to advocate for anti-racist trainings for all of our district leaders, as well as us within the organization. And so that's just a little bit about where we are placing our advocacy. And we will be calling on all of you to get on board to take action in regards to these things as soon as tomorrow. So, and this will drive all of our work. So we have a number of work groups, the grading workbook. We're going to challenge the grading work group to look at grading through a equitable lens, through a racially and socially just lens, so that our practices actually look like what we want to achieve in regards to racial and social justice. The same with the budget, and the same with how we move forward with educating our students in the fall, as early as the fall. So please yeah, Betty, I hear you. What's up?
Temisha, it's Maura.
Hey, Mara.
Hey, while you have some other folks on here still, can you just say, because it goes with what you're saying now, how on the LCAP we were looking at, how the ELs are targeted, and how we noticed that the number of EL students is equivalent, just about the same percentage as African American students, and how we're working on in the LCAP, making that clear that then those monies should be spent equally, to each of those identified groups, subgroups, whatever we call those, or statistically significant groups.
Well, absolutely. You actually just said it. So
okay. I'm sorry. I just don't feel very articulate right now.
Oh no, you were excellent. So Mara is referring to the LCAP, and the LCAP ties directly to budget. And we have an LCAP committee that's working specifically to ensure that, again, everything that we do in Centinela Valley, from the way our certificate or classified staff members' uniforms look and the color of them, the way that looks, to how we spend our money within the district. We are looking at all of those approaches to adequately educating the students of Centinela Valley. So yes, Mara, that is work that we will continue to do as well. Might the panelists have any final words before we sign off?
I think I just the last thing I want to say or reiterate is we need more folks to step up and stand up or speak out. Your like the union is you, right? Like you are the body of our organization, and when there is clearly an injustice, like Sandra said, like what are they gonna do when it's all of us saying no, 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 you can't do that, no, ma'am, versus when it's just me hollering and hooting and I feel alone. Um, so yeah, so that's my last thing. And I do see a question popped up in a box in the chat box.
Yep. Luis?
Yeah. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So hi everyone. Yeah, I came in here kind of late, but one thing I just wanted to bring up, I don't know if it was addressed, was that our kids are seeing a lot of stuff on social media right now, and I've been trying to communicate with them on there just to see how they're doing because it's so hard to get a hold of them in the classroom, but they're definitely on Instagram. So at least I know that they're safe, that they're doing okay. But is there some sort of, I guess I see right here the resolutions for Black Lives Matter Week, but a way to kind of teach the kids through social media what responsible activism is, as opposed to them being caught up on this whole emotional trend. I mean, I'm not trying to say that they shouldn't feel emotional about this because we all feel that emotion. And like Ms. Church was saying, yes, like that's part of this process. Like you need to feel that discomfort. You need to feel that because that tells you as a human that something's wrong. But because these are teenagers and these are kids, I'm nervous about them getting caught up in doing something that's a little bit too extreme for their age. That's going to put them in danger. And I see some kids already posting on their Instagram, them wanting to go do all this stuff and like typing in, oh my God, I'm about to go FS up and all of this kind of stuff. And is there something maybe like a training maybe that we could kind of start doing, or some sort of like uh, a way to kind of start steering kids onto, like, we understand how you're feeling, that you're feeling all of these emotions, go to these sites, go to these specific associations, make your voice heard here, type up a letter to these people, tell these people how you feel. That way they're kind of being more, they're contributing more to a solution. And I myself just posted something on Instagram that said like that I feel like it's important to at certain times bash down barriers, but at the same time, a scalpel can be a lot more effective than a sledgehammer in certain situations. And I'm very nervous about the summer. We won't necessarily have an obligation towards our kids during the summer. And if we're leaving them off on the wrong message, I'm just kind of concerned. And if there was any strategies out right now when it comes to how we could potentially address this.
Church?
Can I speak real quick?
Is it in response to Luis's?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I specifically emailed the district to send out trauma-based links to our families and students. Just as a new counselor, I think it's super important that the experiences that they are having are supported by mental health professionals. For God's sakes, like I've called a hotline this week. It's been really, really, really tough. They did include some of them, but I think as teachers, if you guys want to, I can send you the LACO links to the free mental health supports that you can provide for your students and families. I think, that's one thing we can do. I don't have a answer to any of the other ones, but at least we can give them some of those mental and emotional supports.
Thank you, Stephanie. Church, and then Sandra, will you chime in with the legality of it all?
Yeah.
So I have been receiving, like I said, the drama kids, they love responding. So I definitely had to talk them all off from doing that and remind them that we are in a global pandemic. I don't want you out there exposing yourself and getting sick. That's why we're on distance learning in this present moment. And the other thing is that you're right, none of the students are trained. Now, I was a Black Studies major. I studied social movements, and that's something that I feel very competent at doing, being on the front line at a protest. But students obviously do not have that training or even the hidden knowledge on history to begin to understand all of what's happening right now and then respond accordingly. So you are absolutely right, Luis, and I agree that something needs to happen, but I'm going to say that the problem is that our district is silent. There was no clear message Monday morning to address what happened this week or what students are going through. There was no immediate outcry and stance in defense of Black lives or a message about, oh, guys, we know that you're probably feeling some kind of way. Here's some trauma-informed things that we can do. Nothing until there was an outcry from the student body. That our students are, they're cued in, like you said, they're on social media. Our students were feeling all kinds of things and are ready to respond and act. And we haven't, because we very systematically squashed the push for ethnic studies in this district. Well, yeah, we have a bunch of students who have no idea what the civil rights movement was, what the farm workers movement was, and have no idea how to respond in situations like these because they don't know their history and they're very much disconnected from their identities ethnically and racially. And so they don't have context or language or common language like we're talking about now. They don't have that either. If the adults in our district are struggling to have this conversation about race, can you imagine where the students are on this conversation about race? They also don't have the right tools and language. And so you're right. But I think that if we push forward on this equity bit and we have a robust ethnic studies program and we're having these conversations regularly across all grade levels and content areas, then when something like this happens again, because it will, our students will be ready to respond in a way that is successful and cohesive and smart. And our students on our campus have proved time and time again that when things happen, they try to respond and then it's shut down. When the shootings in Florida happened at Parkland, our students tried to respond and they were stifled a bit. Mike Brown died, our students tried to respond. They were stifled. And so if we were doing this with them and assisting them, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now, Louise. Like we would be in a much better place. And so the state of things in our district needs to improve, and we have to be open and have these dialogues so that when this happens again, we are more prepared. As of now, what you've probably done and what I did, I'm telling my babies, no, you need to stay put. I can't. You stay home and you find other ways to get active. You paint and you post that on social media. You donate if you can. You use the tools that you do have at your disposal right now, which is Instagram or TikTok or whatever, and you act as much as you can or you want to do. You organize in those spaces with other young people. But as far as going out on the front line, no, we're still in a global pandemic. Stay put. Like stay at home.
Thank you. Sandra?
That's been my concern too.
Yeah, and I feel that same way. There's still the pandemic going on. Don't put yourself out there. Most of your students are minors. Very few of them are 18 or older at this point, but, we can't hide from the fact that throughout history, it's students that have made the most lasting change, and that's through their actions. And that's because some of the things that make us the craziest about them, they're willing to take the most risk, right? They've got the most to lose though right now. I saw an article the other day about how millennials were they were suffering so much economically and with the health concerns and with student loan debt that this generation is likely not to be able to ever recover from the stuff that's going. Can you imagine having to start your life basically at this point in time? And there's a lot of rage there. There's a lot of anxiety there, and they feel like they need to do something. Kids don't like to sit still. they don't like to sit still. So whether we like it or not, some of them are going to be out there. I just put that aclu.org/action. Oh, I think I might have put the wrong one. It's .org/action in the chat box. Because when this came about, we were contacting and having discussions in CTA, the legal department. I'm not a lawyer, but with the legal department a couple of years ago over student protests and what they could do, what they shouldn't do, whether or not you should or could talk to them and encourage them to protest. We were encouraged to share the ACLU information because, they're lawyers there for one thing, and they can advise them, but they give them information to help educate them about their rights, rights are being violated constantly while they're out there. So, but they need to know what their rights are for if they find themselves out there and, things are happening around them that they might need to have some legal redress over, so that they know what they are, that they can take precautions beforehand as much as possible. It's great if they could follow, groups of people that are protesting and are organized and reputable, because usually those groups they have some connections with lawyers or with legal counsel who will help them if they get themselves into a situation where they need something like that. It's hard because my focus is to help you and to advise you. I know that you care very much about your students, so be really, really, really careful, especially about stuff that you might do with them online or advise them or tell them online. I don't know that I would. Just be really careful. If you put the link for the ACLU site, there's nothing wrong with that. But telling them about marches and where they're going to happen, and there's a link to marches on the ACLU website. That's fine. That's okay. You send them to that website. That's okay if that's something that they end up connecting with. But be really careful about advising them to go places or to do things that it might get real fast for them. So just be careful about that, and yourselves. I know we're all out there, so it's it's a time for people to stand up, and that action might it might mean that we need to have some assistance. And so if you need that, contact me. you have some protection through your membership and our legal department and the lawyers, the law firms that work with CTA, the GLS Group Legal Services Department, and there are other friends and allies that we can work with. But as far as students go, yes, if you're connected with them on social media, stop by my class sometime and do some work too.
I want to share what I'm doing with my students. We're currently covering the Chicano movement, and we talked about Black Panther and Brown Berets right now, and we're going to be covering the East LA blowouts. And part of the East LA blowouts, one of the the kids develop demands, and so I'm going to be, they had demands, academic demands, they had facilities demand, they had demands for their parents. And so I'll be walking them through, like, this is an opportunity to demand things from our district. And I will be taking your demands and presenting them like I do every year. We kind of go through this to our principal and, I haven't done it to the board, but I did do it to the district. I emailed it because it's just a Google form, and I just email it out. Here's what kids want. And so giving them a space to voice, what do they want, right? Like, Black Lives Matter and the whole movement are demanding things like our students deserve a voice at their site. They know that things can be better. And so I'm also giving them links to petitions that they can sign. A new website today launched called Grassroots Law, and they're accepting volunteers to do different work from home. So giving them opportunities to get involved in different ways, I think is really important.
And that's kind of where I was like wondering, like Ms. Groin said, they're teenagers and they're gonna do something. So I was just more like considering. So that's good. Thank you for that ACLU link, because that's something, if they're like itching to do something, it's like go there. And aside from the people here, is this known for teachers? Because I know I was flooded with responses like 10 minutes after I posted my message, and then a lot of them were like, I've been seeing a lot of this stuff on Instagram, but it means so much more coming from you. Thanks, Rodriguez. And it's because they've developed that bond, right? Because of being with us consistently. And I feel like right now, before we leave them for the year, I just feel like it'd be important to maybe, if there's a way to let all teachers know something they could potentially do and share online to remind students, that way they could see their teachers' faces. I don't know. It's just, I'm just really nervous about the kids and what could potentially happen. One of my friends was sharing a video from his house in Santa Monica, and he saw a bunch of kids getting arrested because they were breaking stuff. And I was just like, oh my God, I hope there's like not, because I saw some kids saying, like, oh, I'm about to go FS up, you know? So I was like, I don't know. That's just my concern.
Mm-hmm.
And if is there legal thing against that though? Or like, do we have to get a formal directive from the district, or how does all of that work?
As educators, we have an inherent responsibility. Like, we are these children's parents. I call them my babies because I really feel like from 8 to 3, they are my babies, and I treat them as such in a supportive manner. And I think it is incumbent of us to support them in moving through the summer in a positive manner that we can all live with. We definitely don't want to see our students in harm's way, and we can create something that can be advantageous for them. And maybe what we create is simply an alternative to just what's going on in the streets may be an opportunity. And if students have another avenue to pursue, then maybe we can provide an opportunity to do something different. So let's work on that, Luis.
I had a suggestion. I have a suggestion. I don't know how well it'll work because I was going to talk to Molly or somebody about it. I emailed her, but I didn't talk to her yet about it. But somehow, like on Canvas, if you could have a Canvas class that still kept your kids that you have this year, and then providing maybe some social emotional learning stuff, some stuff around this, like keeping, not all kids, they wouldn't be required to, it's not a class, they're not getting graded, but somehow to keep in contact with the kids we had this year till we get our new kids, because I have the same fear Luis has, that it's just like summer and then they're going to be gone, and that's okay in a typical year, but not now. So so I've been thinking of ways since webinars I went to and stuff, but thinking about how I could still have those kids tethered to me if they wanted to, maybe once a week in the summer, something, I don't know. And obviously it's completely voluntary, but if they had the Canvas Hub and they had a class there or a way for us to meet there, that we could do some things over the summer if they want to participate. But have that opening, because then it's just like close it down, it's done, the grades are done, bye, see you guys later.
Sweet. So like a connection.
Yeah, and I was just saying Canvas might be a place, since they have it and have computers, at least you could use that and you could post things and do things and have an activity or something. And again, no one would be required to do it. It's not a grade for the kids, but maybe a way to keep the connection. So I got to talk to her about how to do it, but I mean, using Canvas. That would just be easy. That's all I mean by using that to be easy.
Sweet. So we'll add that to the next steps, ensuring that we keep a connection with our students throughout the summer.
My concern with the Canvas thing is like I feel like kids would emotionally respond to that as being part of the system because they've already kind of been primed to see Canvas as something that is part of the system, as opposed to doing something that's a bit more on their emotional gratification side, which would be using social media or something like that, where they can go because they the moment I guarantee the moment they go off of Canvas, they're on Instagram, like or TikTok or something like
No,
that.
and I get that too. Then maybe we have to do something, but then we have more of a, then it creates a little more of a situation for us. That's why I was
true.
trying to think of something like that,
Yeah.
or I don't know, something. But yeah, you're right. I totally agree with you on that. But at the same time, if we all get on social media, or I have a social media just for my kids, I don't know. I'm not on social media enough to know how that would work or be okay in terms of our responsibility. You know what I mean? Or causing issue. I don't know. A
Or that
problem.
YouTube. What about that? I got that link about a YouTube channel. Is it possible to put some messages off of that YouTube channel that could be curated to be acceptable, and then those links could be shared with members so that they could post that link on their social media?
Absolutely.
Possible?
That is part of the vision. And
Okay.
I know in talking with you over the course of the last 2 days that I can count on you to help church with making our YouTube page fantastic. So I'll be calling on both of you as well as Mara to help guide the dialogue in regards to how to keep and maintain that relationship with our students throughout the summer so that they have us.
Yeah.
All right. It is 6:44, and I think this has been a great start to dialoguing in regards to racial and social justice. I encourage you to sign on to or subscribe to our YouTube page. And in addition to that, please look forward to additional opportunities to dialogue with CVSTA in regards to how we educate our students in Centinela Valley, as well as racial and social justice. Ruthie, I didn't give you an opportunity for last words. Would you like to share?
No, I mean, I think I've said everything I need to say, other than, we just need to stay strong, stay committed to this work and go after it relentlessly. I mean, it's an opportunity we can't pass by. And I was glad to see, as many teachers as we saw, and hopefully I'm excited to see the development of the YouTube channel and to be a part of that as well. And yeah.
Sweet. And thank you so much, Sandra, for participating in this dialogue with us. Thank you all for being here. Again, if you have any questions, comments, anything to share, please make sure you contact me via email or send me a text message or give me a call. You have a number of colleagues on the line who will continue to dialogue with you in regard to all things Centinela Valley. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And
peace and love, everybody. Peace and love.
Ditto. Thank you so much, you all. Have a great evening.
Thank you all.
For additional and regular updates, please follow and subscribe. Don't forget to join our Remind. Text at CVSTA News to 81010. Check below for all the links you need.